I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. His name was Senator Richard Hayes. For 30 years, he was known as the greatest male ally of the women's rights movement in America. He sponsored every major bill. He gave passionate speeches on the Senate floor. He stood beside us at every rally, every march, every victory. And I believed in him. I trusted him with everything, my research, my strategies, my life's work. Then, 3 months ago, his grandson came to my door with a box of documents. My grandfather died last week, he said. I found these in his office. I think you need to see them. Inside that box was proof that for 30 years Richard Hayes had been taking my work, my bills, my speeches, my ideas, and using them to build his political career. While I stayed invisible, he became a legend. My name is Gloria. I'm 90 years old, and this is the story of how I finally claimed what was mine. I met Richard Hayes in 1968. I was 33 years old, a young activist who had just started making noise about women's rights. He was a 40-year-old congressman from Ohio, ambitious and looking for a cause that would make him stand out. I want to help, he told me at a fundraiser. I believe in what you're fighting for, but I need you to understand something. In Washington, ideas don't matter unless they come from someone with power. He leaned closer. You have the ideas. I have the platform. Together, we can change everything. It sounded like a partnership. It felt like an opportunity. It was a trap. For the next 30 years, I fed Richard Hayes everything. Policy proposals I had researched for months, speeches I had written word by word, strategies that had kept me up countless nights, and he took it all. The first major bill was in 1972, the Equal Employment Act. I spent 14 months researching discrimination cases, interviewing women who had been fired for getting pregnant, denied promotions because of their gender. I wrote every word of that bill, every clause, every protection, every legal argument. Richard introduced it on the Senate floor as his legislation. The newspapers called him a pioneer, a visionary, a champion of women. My name was nowhere. Gloria, you understand, he said when I asked. If people knew a woman wrote this, they would dismiss it. They need to hear it from a man, from a senator. That's just how Washington works. And I believed him, because it was 1972, because women couldn't get credit cards without their husband's permission, because I thought the cause was bigger than my ego. So I kept working. 1975, the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, my research, his name. 1978, the Workplace Harassment Guidelines, my interviews with hundreds of women, his press conference. 1982, the Equal Pay Amendment, my numbers, my arguments, my sleepless nights, his standing ovation in the Senate. By 1990, Richard Hayes was one of the most celebrated politicians in America. Time magazine called him the conscience of the Senate. He received humanitarian awards, honorary degrees, invitations to speak at the United Nations. And me? I was that activist who works with Senator Hayes, a footnote, a shadow. But I told myself it was worth it. The laws were passing. Women's lives were changing. The work was getting done, even if no one knew it was my work. Then Richard retired in 1998. There was a huge ceremony. Presidents sent congratulations. He gave a speech about his life's work defending women's rights. He mentioned me once. And of course, I couldn't have done it without the support of many dedicated volunteers. After 30 years of partnership, I was reduced to a volunteer. But I still said nothing, because by then I had convinced myself that this was just how things were, that my role was behind the scenes. That recognition didn't matter. I was wrong about all of it. Richard Hayes died 3 months ago at 95. The obituaries called him a hero, a legend, the greatest male feminist of his generation. A week after the funeral, his grandson Michael showed up at my door. He was carrying a cardboard box, and his face was pale. Ms. Gloria, I was cleaning out my grandfather's office. I found these. He set the box on my kitchen table. I think they belong to you. Inside were folders, dozens of them, each one labeled with a date and a bill name, and inside each folder were my original documents, my handwritten notes, my typed drafts with my name at the top, all of them with a sticky note in Richard's handwriting. Remove Gloria's name before copying. Remove Gloria's name. For 30 years, he had systematically erased me from my own work, not because Washington wouldn't accept a woman's ideas, but because he wanted the credit for himself. There was more. Financial records showing he had received $4 million in speaking fees over the years, speeches I had written, a memo to his staff. Gloria does the work. I take the meetings. This arrangement benefits everyone. Benefits everyone. He made millions. I made nothing. But the worst document was at the bottom of the box. A letter he wrote but never sent, dated 1995. It was addressed to me. Dear Gloria, it began. I have been meaning to write this for years. You deserve to know the truth. When I first met you, I saw an opportunity. You were brilliant, passionate, and completely unaware of how valuable you were. I told you that Washington wouldn't accept ideas from a woman. That was a lie. The truth is, Washington would have accepted you, but if they had, there would have been no place for me. So I kept you hidden. I took your work and made it mine. I built my entire career on your brilliance. I am not proud of this, but I am also not sorry enough to stop. The recognition, the awards, the legacy, I can't give them up, so this letter will never be sent, and you will never know. I hope somehow you can forgive me. I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it down and cried, not because I was sad, because I was furious. 30 years of my life, 30 years of believing in a partnership that never existed, 30 years of being erased by someone who called himself my ally. Michael was still standing in my kitchen, looking ashamed. I'm so sorry, he said. I had no idea. I always thought my grandfather was a hero. He was, I said slowly. To everyone except the woman who made him one. What are you going to do? Michael asked. I looked at the box of evidence, 30 years of stolen work, documented and undeniable, and I made a decision. I'm going to tell the truth. 2 months later, a journalist named Sarah Chen published an investigative piece in the Washington Post, The Woman Behind the Legend, how Gloria Turner wrote the laws that changed America. She had the documents, the handwritten notes, the sticky notes saying, remove Gloria's name, the unsent letter, everything. The response was overwhelming. Women's organizations issued statements acknowledging my contributions. Universities that had given Richard honorary degrees reached out to offer me the same. Politicians called to apologize for never knowing the truth. Last month, Congress passed a resolution officially recognizing my role in the legislation that changed millions of women's lives. The Equal Employment Act, the Domestic Violence Prevention Act, the Equal Pay Amendment. They now bear a notation, primary author, Gloria Turner, my name. Finally, after 55 years, some people asked why I didn't expose Richard while he was alive, why I waited until he was dead to tell the truth. The honest answer? I didn't have the evidence. I suspected, yes, but I didn't have proof until Michael brought me that box. And maybe part of me didn't want to believe it, didn't want to accept that someone I trusted so completely had been using me all along. But here's what I've learned at 90 years old. The truth doesn't expire. It doesn't matter if it takes 30 years or 50 years or a lifetime. The truth will always find its way out. If you're watching this and someone in your life is using your work for their own gain, whether it's a boss, a partner, a friend, or an ally, hear me. Your work matters. Your name matters. Your contribution matters. Don't let anyone convince you that staying invisible is noble. Don't let anyone tell you the cause is more important than your credit. Don't let anyone erase you from your own story. I spent 30 years believing that my sacrifice was necessary, that staying in the shadows was the price of progress. But the truth is, Richard Hayes didn't need to erase me. He chose to, because it benefited him, not the cause. Him. If this story touched you, share it. Tell me in the comments, has anyone ever used your work for their own gain? What did you do about it? Because the world is full of invisible people whose names should have been on the page. I'm Gloria. I'm 90 years old, and my name is finally where it belongs.